Welcome back to TIW on Tap, everyone. I am Mason,
I'm Danny.
aka Big Sexy, and today we are joined by the very lovely Tambra Sabatini, who is the executive director of the Titusville Alumni Association, and much, much more. She is very involved in the community, so we are very, very excited to have her today. Tambra, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Well, thank you for having me here today. This is pretty exciting. I'm very excited to be here and happy to kind of get the view from the other side of this window for a change. So that's a lot of fun. I've been in and around the town for a lot of years now, but then I went away for a couple years, maybe like 20. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk a little bit about, what we're going on with now. So
Perfect.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you in.
it's going to be fun.
Thank you so much for joining us. It is exciting. I know you had the chance to see the podcast studio before, and you can probably see how much it's already changed around
I love
here.
it.
So
It's just really amazing what you've done here, and like you said, it keeps expanding and growing, and I never know quite where to look.
I know it kind of almost throws you into a spin when you walk into this room with how many signs are hanging
Yeah,
up
we definitely
now.
have some hidden gems in here.
You do, but if the head starts spinning, you better worry.
We've been there a time or two. I am quickly interrupting this episode with Tambra to remind you that we are open this Friday from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and we have Be the Star karaoke in the house. So if you like singing, come on down and sing your lungs out with us. And we are open this Saturday from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and we have the Breeze Band in the house. And I want to give a shout out to Northwest Accounting for sponsoring that show and bringing those guys in. Come celebrate the end of tax season. They're going to be playing from 7:30 to 10:30, as well as Be the Star Karaoke will be here from 7:30 to 10:30. And the Magic Bus Kitchen will be open both days. So come on down, get dinner, enjoy some awesome live music, and we'll see you this weekend. Now back to Tambra.
Your family has a lot of roots in Titusville. Both your parents graduated from.
My actual great-great-grandfather was from the area way back in the oil boom days, so we've been around quite a while. He actually was best friends with Benninghoff, the guy who had all the gold stolen and everything else from him. So there are stories that go way back, but coming a little further ahead, both my parents are from here. My mom graduated in 57, 56. My dad graduated in 57, somewhere right in there. Anyways, I should know that, but I get those dates confused. But anyways, he was in the Athletic Hall of Fame in 1981. So he was the kind of guy. If I meet the women from his age range, they all kind of go, "Oh yeah," because he was Mr. Athlete. He was pretty cool, pretty buff dude. So that was fun. Yeah. So it's always kind of cool when you meet up with people and they give you the stories about your parents. And both my parents have been gone for a long time now, and it's like, this is cool to hear these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, and it's always cool too to hear connections that everyone from around here has to Titusville.
Oh my goodness!
And you do tend to hear a lot of people that have eventually maybe grew up here, left, and moved back.
Definitely.
The stories that come from their families being here for many, many years is, I think, in a way, maybe a rarity. You don't tend to see families stick around one area quite as much as I think you hear about it here. So it's cool.
It
and
is
I think
unique. It is unique. And I actually tell people, I said, I think there's some weird genetic strains here in the area that just have this really creative, ingenious bent, that from the families, that some of the original families that came in, like the late 1700s, early 1800s, when everything was started here. And you look at those families, and those families are still here. I actually, when I moved back about 20 some years ago from when I was away for 20 years, that tells you how old I am. But I was kind of shocked to see the same family line still in the when we would go to like a wrestling match or something. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're all still here.
Yep.
But going back to the whole thing, I think, these people who came in here, if you ever look at the whole list of inventions and, this place and the different things that were invented and created through all of this region, particularly centered here, it's like the families that moved here, they had this incredible creative spirit, pioneer spirit. They also knew how to, I always say it's creation ex nihilo. They could create out of nothing. When you walk in the woods around here and you see the gear and the equipment that's out there, it blows your mind.
Oh, like up by my house, I have so much oil history.
Right.
My Quaker State built my house for my great grandfather.
Oh, geez.
And he tended all the well leases. It was in 1927, and Yeah, you just take a walk. There's just so much oil memorabilia laying in the woods and pump houses still.
Right.
And yeah, there's a lot of history here.
But my grandfather and another older gentleman who lived out that way, who, like I said, did the Centennial well, I remember being a little girl jumping over their rod lines, moving back at their pump houses, riding my horses through the releases, and then I'd see them have an issue or a problem, and they'd go dig around in, some pile of metal somewhere, and they'd fix it, and they'd create it, or they'd make a pumping jack. I remember an old Volkswagen that must have been from the 50s, not a Bug, but something else. They dragged it down our road. These old guys and my dad dragged it down the road to build a pumping jack out of it for a well they drilled in our backyard. And my grandfather was a driller, so I'm like, they just, that creative ability here just constantly intrigues me.
It is fascinating.
It is.
I've done a lot of research to post on the Ironworks Facebook page.
I love it.
And the stories I've learned that I've said this before, but there's so much history here that not enough people know about. People that have lived here their whole lives aren't even aware of a quarter of the history because it's not taught or talked about quite enough. And that's one of our goals here on the
I love
podcast
that you're
to bring
including that part, because that's the heritage of our alumni.
Yep.
They're the people who did the work, who created the items, who invented this or fixed that or came up with a unique idea. They're the guys who just worked it and made it happen.
Absolutely.
And it changed the world. I mean, we use that loosely, but when you really start digging into that, it
did.
It just did.
Yeah.
It absolutely did.
There's surprisingly some people in places I've gone to, I've talked to some people, and I'm like, oh, I'm from the valley that changed the world. And they're like, oh, isn't that Titusville, Pennsylvania?
Nice.
And I'm like, how do you know this
Nice.
in the UK? So
That's pretty cool.
It's very fascinating to see that slogan has really gotten out there too.
Yeah, I like that.
So speaking of traveling in the UK, so you had mentioned you left Titusville for 20 years. So can you explain where you went?
Okay.
And eventually what brought you back to the area?
Sure. And it was definitely, I wanted to come back. I mean, I left, I went to Harrisburg for college, got recruited by the federal government to work in intelligence and national security law as a paralegal. And I spent the rest of my time down in the D.C. and Northern Virginia area. So it was fun. It was an incredible career. I spent my days in business suits that I can't even imagine wearing now, and heels, and doing the whole thing, and in all the government buildings, in and out of them, in the Pentagon and some other places, which will remain unnamed. But, I had the opportunity to work with lawyers and go before the Supreme Court. I worked, I had some interesting things where I would be flown. Our particular entity had a Learjet. And we would go fly out on that, and we would go to remote spaces where I never knew where they were taking me to do, briefings and work with whatever was going on there. And it was just a really intriguing time period for me. And I always tell people, I said, you have to understand, we were under Reagan and Thatcher back then, the Prime Minister of England. And we were taking down communism, and the Berlin Wall came down, and, pieces of the wall were coming into our compound. And, it was a really exciting time.
Wow.
I mean, it's cool. I worked all the Iran-Contra case. There's all these things that were compressed in that time period.
Is that the Iranian crisis?
The Iran-Contra with
okay.
Colonel North and everybody. So it was just an exciting time to be as young as I was at the time, because I was still under 30.
Yeah.
And it was just a really unique experience.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
It was pretty cool.
And I've kind of had the chance to talk with you about that
Right.
in the past. And I've always thought that is very, very fascinating.
It was a unique opportunity.
Yeah.
The door opened, they recruited, and I jumped in and said, hey, let's go for another adventure.
There you go. So you were in D.C., what, you said for 20 years?
Right. I worked for 10 of those years with the government, and then I actually, once I left to have my first child, Ariana, I was 28. So my career was done, but I actually kept working as a freelance from home before it was ever a thing with, people just didn't work remotely, but I actually managed to pull it off. So that was kind of fun.
Right.
And I kept that going till I moved up here. And by that time I had number 2, Tasha, who's another interesting adventure creature. And it's just worked out really well. It's been an interesting journey through it all.
Absolutely. And what exactly brought you back to this area after being away for so long?
Well, of course, I'm living in the suburbs of Northern Virginia. Traffic, we always say that we got engulfed and devoured because we had a house here, and before you knew it, fields and everything, we were along the Potomac, but everything went over us and kept building and growing out beyond, and the traffic was so insane. Just to go 3 miles, to go to work was 17 miles one way, and it would take you an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like my Uncle Jimmy lived down there for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And he worked for the federal government, and he would go to work at like 1 a.m. and come home at 10
Weird hours
a.m.
just to avoid it.
just to avoid the traffic. My brother went down there for like 11 months. He got rear-ended 3 times.
Oh, jeez.
And dude, I-95 is a whole different animal than DC traffic.
Well, I remember leaving Harrisburg to go down there I was 19 at the time. And, you don't know where you're going. You've never been in a big city by yourself, really, really like that. And you're driving along, trying to find an apartment, pull in here and driving the Beltway and doing everything. And, we didn't have cell phones back then. And you just did these things. And, I drove the Beltway every day to work to and from the first couple years. And you just take it for granted and just go do it.
That is one of my favorite things about being in this area in particular is the freedom of, you're 20 minutes away from Franklin.
Exactly.
You're 20 minutes away from the other end, you're Union City. So you can pretty much get wherever you want, whenever you want.
It makes a difference.
It's awesome. Yeah.
So, the traffic was definitely a part of it. I lived in the cul-de-sac, but anybody who knows me and sees my childhood pictures sees that I'm like playing in the creek, or I'm playing in the woods or riding my horse or doing whatever back then. And it's like, I'm just an outdoors person. My parents were too. We camped and fished and hiked and backpacked and canoed, and that's just what my world was. And I made it work a little bit down there, but it wasn't quite my ideal.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't want my girls raised in the suburbs.
And I'm glad you didn't, because I've been able to know them my whole life.
That's
so
true.
it's
That's
perfect.
true. It's been fun to bring them back here, and then of course we have family here, so that was fun that they could connect with their cousins and really get close and comfortable with that. If we'd stayed down there, they wouldn't have had that the same way at all.
Yeah.
The experiences you get in a small town. Just the little, the princess queen things, and then you have the little athletic things, and you can go outside and go do this. They're little small town things. They learned very young to volunteer through organizations with me. So they went right along. Whatever I was doing, they were doing. If we needed to clean up from an event, they cleaned up from an event, picked up the chairs and did the work.
Yeah. And that type of stuff is so fun too. Being involved is great.
It is.
And it's a good thing.
So you're very active in the community. So when did you become the executive director of the Titusville Alumni Association?
That's only been a year and 2 months? So
Pretty recent.
It's a very recent thing. I actually stepped way back for a while. I had opened up some businesses of my own, and I was always freelancing and always doing the book publishing too, which is something I do a lot of still. But I stepped back. I've been on a lot of committees and a lot of different positions, and I just needed a little break from that. But this opened up a year ago in December, and I saw the ad. I saw in the paper that Ron was leaving. I'm like, oh, that's like the perfect job for me. I can have so much fun with that. And I have so many ideas still that, they kind of keep me just on the right pace. So I don't overdo it, but
we truly appreciate all the shout outs you're doing on Facebook
you're
for us.
welcome.
And
It is very great. I'm loving it.
Well,
and
good.
Especially my grandma's loving it.
Oh, good.
She loves it so much. But I kind of find it funny that you say you try not to overdo yourself, because I've got a list here of everything you are currently involved with. You were the chamber board president, the Rotary president. You're part of the United Way annual drive leader. You are in.
These are all words.
Okay. Not current.
Not current. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
But you were.
I was.
You were the Council of the Arts executive director, Crawford County Convention and Visitors Bureau. You've opened several businesses, which you have mentioned here. You are a published author of 100 books, which...
Okay. I'm not, but I help other people publish. I have probably
Right. Okay.
I probably have
misread that
15
then.
or 20 of my own, but the
Okay.
others I publish for other people.
So I want you to go in a little bit on being an author. Can you speak a little bit about
Sure.
what you've written about and maybe if
Oh,
you sell
definitely.
them and where people could get those?
I love writing and publishing. I love sharing how easy it is with people. I started back in 2007. I wanted to do it sooner, but when you work for the government with secrecy clearances and top secret clearances and everything else, you have to sign agreements and you can't do certain things for a certain period of time, even though nothing what I was going to write was about any of that yet. But I really wanted to work into that, and I always thought it would be cool. I'm not a super talented writer, and I have lots of ideas, but I just, so the first book I did was in 2007. I published it through a vanity press. It was called Live Now, Touch Today. I'm a very philosophical, motivation, inspiration kind of person. I like people to be energized. I like people to go accomplish things. I like people to see what's possible. And I always tell people there's always a way to get to yes. Let's make something happen and put it in motion. So that's a lot of the gist of what I like to write and think about and put, get people moving. So that was my first book. And it's done very well. It's done fine. It's still out there. Anybody can still get it on my Amazon author page. If you look it up on Amazon, you'll see just a bunch of stuff on there all over the board. I have a couple adventure style recipe book, journals. I do a lot of vintage books too. I like to do a lot of public domain books that I like to reprint that are adventure novels. And I'm working on a whole new series there. Excuse me. And I have a lot of clients from all over, and they run the gamut of one's an anger management therapist over in Ohio. Another woman, we're just finishing a murder mystery up in Michigan. Another gentleman does pyramid research all around the world and has this giant book, and he does podcasts all around the world.
I was just listening to a podcast about the Egyptian pyramids.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, it's kind of hard to figure out how they did all that. And
It's fascinating.
yeah, just like the tons of granite and how they moved them. I'm like, how did they do that? What's going on here?
Exactly.
Oh.
Well, this guy actually went into how all of these places have a similar measurement in them. And he's gone clear around the entire world and compiled this book. And he hands it to me, and it was 700 pages to start. I thought, oh my goodness. And it's colored pictures all through it. I thought, how are we going to do this one? So we did it last year.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's very good. He, like I said, he's on podcasts all over. So
Yeah,
he's
we'll have to
cool.
listen to him. You'll have to give us the
I can do
give us
that.
the link. So that's incredible, and I guess I never even realized you were into writing and publishing. So that's just another avenue.
Well, for the alumni, I just published our first book.
Okay.
In December, and one of the ideas I came into the office ready to run with was for almost 30 years now. The Alumni Association has put together those alumni news, and there's so many good articles in it, and so many good pieces of history and all these pieces. I thought, oh, we can't. They're just sitting in. People have thrown them away, or in our case, they're just sitting in our files, and nobody's ever going to see the light of day again unless they occasionally would choose to reprint one. I'm like, okay, they need to be published.
Yeah.
So my first, I hit the ground running on that one last year, and I said, so by December we had the first of 3 volumes out for that. There's so much information packed in there, in the list of like the Titusville inventions and first things that we did. That's all in there. The Ida
That's
Tarbell things in there, Heisman's in there. Just so many pieces of history are in there, and that was my goal.
Yeah.
So that's on
gonna
Amazon.
I'm gonna need to check that out so I can.
I'll bring one down to you.
Yeah, perfect. I would love to read that.
There's a lot of information. I didn't write it. I curated it.
Yeah, that's cool though.
And I compiled the information. There are a few places where I saw something that might have been out of date or new information, so I would tweak that. But otherwise, it's like,
Right.
If I remember, I think Ron did a article about my grandpa. My grandpa, he sat down with my grandpa Wescott, and Grandpa was talking about how he grew up, and they were very poor, and he was out in the Pleasantville area, and his dad tended oil leases, and I'd walk 5 miles to school every day. And I'm like, yeah, this generation has no idea. But then how he grew up and went to the Korean War and he got drafted, and he came back and he started a business. He's a mechanic, and raised
We've got
5
his,
boys, and
Yep.
We've got his sign hanging up right over there.
That's pretty cool.
so
There are a lot of those stories. We actually did I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I have a friend whose mother grew up at Miller Farm, on the farm that was there back in the 1920s, etc. And she was in her 90s when we interviewed her. We did a recording with her, and her name was Ida Miller, and then later Ida Schaefer, which is funny because, of course, everybody was naming their daughters Ida back then because of Ida Tarbell. But she was telling us these stories and showing us where the house was down in there and where the garage was. And then her daughter actually showed us pictures of the garage and everything. But speaking of 5 miles to school, she had 2 really interesting stories. And the one was literally an uphill both ways story. But where you look where she lived, so you go across the railroad tracks at the bridge and go up a little bit where the steps are to the Girard Trail, just beyond that is where their house was. So she had to walk down, then walk clear up Miller Farm Road this direction, and the schoolhouse was up there. I remember the old corner where there was an old schoolhouse years ago when I was little. So she literally had to walk up there and then home, back down, then back up. So she did have to walk uphill both ways.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the other good story she told us, which is kind of cool, or not at the moment it wasn't, but she'd been bitten by a rattlesnake down in there. And the railroad line was still running there at the time, and they had, I don't know whether it was a telephone or a telegraph, but they could ring for help. And her dad ran down, must have been some kind of telephone call or something, but it was she was a little girl, so it was really a long time ago. And the train stopped. They had the train stop to get her in town so she could go to, and they had an ambulance waiting at the train station here in town somewhere. So I'm like, wow. Things we wouldn't think about now.
Yeah, no, you would never even imagine that.
No.
That's just, I probably would have just keeled over and died.
There you go. Let's hope not. So that was fun. We got her on video. That was kind of cool.
So for the people that don't know, can you explain a little bit about what the Alumni Association does?
Sure. The Alumni Association was put into motion in 1996. And Ron Joyce and Carl Engelke were 2 of the founders. Ken Winger was another founder. And Margaret Feely was one of the first assistants who then moved into basically functioning as an executive director role. And shout out to her for the incredible collection she compiled of files and pictures and, who did what and how they did this and, the original alumni news, everything. The first years were incredible what they put together. An alumni association is kind of a normal thing for college, university, but not for a high school. Anytime you mention it to somebody, they're going, wow, that'd be kind of cool if we had one.
Yeah.
And, 30 years ago almost, there weren't that many. So it is kind of a very unique beast that we have. And it encompasses quite a few things. So they jumped early on. They jumped into publishing the Alumni News, which goes out twice a year. And like I told you just a little bit ago, we probably have 8,000 on the active list right now.
that's impressive.
Well, and there's a lot of those that it's like, that's just 1 per household. That's the actual mailing list where there's 1 per household. So we also have multi-generational alumni households. And so the postal system sorting system sends 1. So we actually have an active or less active list of about 11,000.
Yeah.
So you send 1 to 1 house and it may hit several generations of alumni at the same time. So that's really cool.
That is very,
it's
very
pretty
cool.
amazing.
Now you help people like different classes plan out their like class reunions and everything, don't you?
Definitely.
Yeah, you have a huge part in that, which is very cool. So I know we were going to have you back on to talk about this a little bit later,
Sure, we can
but
do
if
that.
you want to give a shout out to, so it's Alumni Weekend coming up.
During Oil Festival.
Yeah, in August. So I believe August 10th.
The actual all-school reunion is on the Friday the 9th.
Okay, the
in
9th.
August, yep. We're actually starting that weekend because we want to bring people in to help support the community. So it's kind of, and shout out to everybody here who's been helping me on the committee, who stepped up. I mean, and we have great alumni here with Kim and Jody and Mishy and Tracy. And
My Aunt Mish.
Yep, get them all in here because they have been working to get this done. And the venue here, thanks to Bob, what he's put together makes it possible to bring in not just the overall everybody, but now we have the little classes who are choosing to meet here. So we'll have a couple tables for some of the classes this year as well. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. I mean, it's been growing and growing and growing, but the whole idea is to bring alumni back to town.
Yep.
And not just for the alumni side of it, but to support the community.
Yeah, I've had my 10-year and my 15-year class reunions, and it was so fun.
Oh, good.
And there's some people, like, I never really talked to in high school. Talked to them all night long.
Right.
It was great catching up with people. And I'll have a little story I have to show. I brought this in.
Oh.
So we have a barn out on Gaswell Road, and my dad used to he had a Friday night bash for his class reunions.
Oh, fun.
He had a class of 79.
Okay.
So this I found in the barn the other night.
I love it. I love it.
And they're going to be a class of 79 is going to have their 45th class reunion coming up. And I feel bad because two people it's not going to be there is our good friend Ralph Kerr and my dad. He passed away in July, but he always had the bashes. And those Friday night bashes, I think his 40th, it was out at Neiltown at his house. And I think he probably had 160 people there.
Is that amazing?
I pulled in and there's cars lined up the
That's
driveway.
so much
and I'm
fun.
like, holy crap, how did
What
you do it?
happened
He's
here?
like, I know how to throw some parties.
We can do it right.
Yeah, that blows my mind because that's
cool.
way more people than were even in my class to begin with.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I graduated with about 106 people, I think.
I think mine was 165, if I remember right.
Mine was supposed to be.
Mine was 212. So, and then before that so I think it was 1969, they brought in Pleasantville High School. So the Alumni Association actually represents St. Joseph's Academy and Pleasantville High School and, of course, Titusville High School. So we had a couple years in there where the classes got really big, 212 up to, I think, 260 something was the peak of
That's
classes.
a big class for Titusville.
Well, and none of you understand this either. Back then, we didn't have a middle school.
Oh, yeah.
So junior high was on the Colstock side, and senior high was on the new senior high building. And I still have PTSD from when I came in from Little Cherry Tree School, little country school, into here, which was in town, and you're thrown in there, and you couldn't get through the hallways. Everybody had to share lockers because everybody had books, tons of books, and I was tiny, so I would get shoved in lockers occasionally and closed in.
Oh, my God.
But you couldn't get through the hallways. It was like, I can't get to my class.
Yeah, that's crazy. But the high school kind of felt desolate the years I was there because
It feels
pretty
strange
much,
now to me.
Yeah, the classes definitely aren't as small, but I've heard they're getting bigger again.
They seem to be growing.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the idea is to keep bringing alumni back for the all school.
Yeah.
We're going to start Thursday night, just to give you a quick overview, with a skate night pizza party out at the rink.
Okay.
So that's going to be fun. And Mishi is going to be one of the hostesses, and so is Brian Ripp.
Oh, perfect.
So
I'd
we're
love to
just-
see Mish and Rib on skates. How funny is that?
I think you will. I'll be out on skates. I won't hesitate.
I believe you can skate, but I can't see Jetson being able to
I know.
skate very well. I love it.
No, yeah, I can definitely still skate.
He'll be coming in the next day to the
I'm older
ironworks.
than him.
Give me a Guinness, my back hurts.
He'll look like Frankenstein out there on skates.
Oh, that's too funny.
So that's our starting. But we'll go right through Sunday. The only day we're not doing anything that weekend is Saturday, because we want alumni to be in town, spend time with their families, visit with their friends, and go to the oil festival events. So kind of wrapping it back around all that.
Yeah. And if you guys don't know, Oil Festival is a very, very great time to visit Titusville, especially for the first time. It is not just for Titusville citizens. We welcome anyone and everyone to town that weekend. It is a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff going on. We here will be open 3 days, I think, that weekend. There's the Brew Fest going on. There are vendors all around. There's music in the park. So there's tons of fun stuff to do. So if you can, try to book out your days now to come into Titusville between the 9th, 10th, and 11th of August. And it'll be totally worth it. So kind of switching gears here a little bit.
Sure.
You have a YouTube page. It's
I
called
do.
Cross Adventuring.
Cross adventuring.
So can you explain a little bit about what that is, what got
Sure.
you into posting on YouTube
Yeah.
and things like that?
Well, it kind of came out of, the whole publishing side of everything where I really wanted to do more online. I was working from home. I worked as a private investigator for a while out of Phoenix from home, did that for a bit. So I'm always looking for little angles of different things, to fill in the spare time because I've always worked part-time. Actually, once Ariana was born, oops, coming over.
We'll have to cut that one out.
I worked part-time always so I could be available for the girls. So I was always trying to find something to do. And of course we'd go do adventures everywhere. So I just wanted to fill in the time, but I wanted to create some monetary income online, find some other angles to do things. And the publishing thing was one. And I thought, this YouTube thing would be fun. And it's more than just strapping on a GoPro, as you've learned. But I came up with the idea of cross-adventuring, kind of more based on CrossFit, because for years I ran the inaugural race of the Oil Creek 100. I did the 50K the first year, and then I did the 50K multiple times, and the 100K multiple times, and failed at the 100-miler, but I'm not fast enough for that to stay with it. But
I couldn't even attempt. So
you could totally do the 50K, no problem. But so I wanted to start. I would see people out there, and this was twofold. On one level, they didn't understand the history, so I wanted to find ways to bring in history of what they were running over, not just section 1, 2, 3, and 4. And on the other side, I wanted to find ways to entice people to do more than just run, because we have so much here.
Yeah.
You can kayak, you can bike, you can cross country ski, you can every season there's something to do here. And if you see on the first part of those channels, there was quite the hodgepodge of different activities and different people and different things that we would do, because there was always something to do. There's never a reason to be bored here, and I like the idea of being, I'm not super fit right now, but I like being more functionally fit in the sense that the more things I do, the more I can do.
Right.
So that's where that started. And people, wanted to be included in what we did. And so we would do, more people here and more people there, and they'd want to go on this, kayak camping trip, or they'd want to go on this ski trip or do whatever. So, but they're all things you don't need to fly away and go do some big exotic vacation.
Yeah.
We really wanted it to focus on things you can do here out of our own backyard.
Yeah.
And that's been a big key. It's kind of morphed into the motorcycle side thing. He brought me a motorcycle helmet when I turned 50. That was almost 8 years ago. So I'm like, okay. But I didn't like the highway stuff. I didn't like that. And I've always liked mountain biking, and I like being in the woods. So if you can get me in the woods, I'm happy. Get me on the back roads of the dirt trails, whatever. So we kind of started changing up the whole bike thing, because I want more adventure involved in everything.
Yeah.
And so we kind of found this niche where there's adventure touring and adventure motorcycles, and it's actually one of the biggest trending areas in motorcycles right now.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
It's huge. It's incredible. People are traveling the world doing this, and so we started packing our bags. I'm like, let's go do this. So we started doing that. So we got involved in the motorcycle camping, moto camping. Can't even talk now suddenly, but it was kind of the best of backpacking and hiking and mountain biking, but it had motors, had wheels. You could go a little further, a little faster, a little longer, stop anywhere and go do a hike, camp along streams and remote places and wild camp and all the things that appeal to me.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I was checking out your page, and I see you go over to like the PA Wilds a
Sure,
lot.
that was a fun one.
And that is beautiful over there. If you're over out by like Cinemahoning
Right.
and the PA Grand Canyon, Benazet, where the elk are, it is beautiful country.
We had an amazing elk encounter the one night we were coming into a campsite, trying to find a campground that night. We'd wild camped the night before, and this guy said, "You just passed an elk back there." I'm like, why did we not see it? It was getting dark. We were tired. We were trying to get in, and it was getting cold and everything else. So we turned around real quick and went back, and we're like, oh yeah, he's right here, and there's his whole harem right there. And he just stood there. We have great pictures. These people are out there, to try to go see these things. We're like, oh, he's right here.
Yeah.
But it was further north than Benazet. It was some of the new grounds they're putting in up there where they're pulling them up.
Yeah, that area is incredible.
It just, that whole loop was just an amazing experience, what we experienced on that ride.
Yeah, and this state, like Pennsylvania, is beautiful. There's
Oh.
so many places to go, and like our fall foliage here is, it's people come from all around the world to come here for that, and it's beautiful.
It's my favorite time to go out and do those kind of adventures because, the nights are cold, but you make a fire in some remote place and,
I often forget. Well, before I had left for a long time, I realized how much I took for granted when I had left, and then I came back and I'm like, oh my God, this is, I am so lucky to
the best of all
live
worlds.
in this place. Yeah, it's perfect. So it is fascinating. So if anyone wants to check out the YouTube channel, it is called Cross Adventuring, correct? So go ahead and check that out. They feature a lot of the local area as well. So you can kind of get in mind maybe what you can do on your trip to the Titusville Ironworks or just to Titusville in general. We have plenty of very, very fun things to do on the outdoor side of things. We have Oil Creek, which Tambra had mentioned. You can kayak down. You can do hiking in Oil Creek State Park, which is very cool. There's a lot of races. The OC 100's coming up. So if you feel like running 100 miles, I don't know why you ever would.
Start at 50.
Yeah.
50K.
Also got the OC&T Railroad.
Right.
So they're going to be doing some rides here soon, right?
Yeah. Yep. So tons of stuff to do on your trip to Titusville. Well, Tambra, I just want to say again, thank you so much for coming in. I am more than happy to sit here and talk to you for 4 more hours because there's so much to talk about. But we will definitely be having you back on.
I'll be glad to come back anytime.
A little bit closer to Alumni Weekend.
Sure, and then we'll go over the whole schedule of events and talk about what classes are doing when and where. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, is there... Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Oh, we appreciate you coming on. It means a lot to us. And but yeah, Mason, what do you got?
I was just going to say, if there's anything you want to shout out or let the people know, this camera right here, go ahead and give a little update.
Oh, jeez. Well, actually, if you saw the article in the newspaper the other day, I am looking for more heritage side. So I'm going to actually give a quick plug for a little bit of what's going on this week.
Absolutely.
So Monday, all the scholarships were due for the Titusville Alumni Association and Titusville Promise scholarships. So what our alumni have made possible every year is just amazing. Through the donations and contributions since 1996, between those 2 sets of scholarships, and that encompasses quite a few, we give away approximately $50,000 to $60,000 a year.
Wow.
To scholarships to our students.
That's amazing.
It is so amazing. Good. So I just want to say thank you to all of our alumni for those who, even the $20 donations goes into our funds. The investments are growing. We keep building. Your funds combined with their funds, and their funds come together, and we're just able to do so much for our students in this community. And we had 50 applications come in for the different scholarships this year.
Wow.
50 different students. Some of those are crossovers to the Titusville Promise and the Titusville Alumni scholarships that we run. But it's an amazing set of kids that we have in this day and age when people don't think we have kids who are trying to accomplish and achieve anything. They need to come and talk with me.
Yep.
Because I can give you one example after another, and I have a group of reviewers that I just was finalizing everything today to go to the scholarship committee. And they're going to be blown away by these applications. These kids volunteer in the community. They work part-time jobs. They're involved in their athletics. They're involved in the school. Their studies are good. Their studies are on point. And they're just sharp kids. And they're out of this community. And I'm so proud of them. And I'm so thankful for what the Alumni Association has been able to do for the past 30 years. It started with the group I mentioned earlier. And then Ron was able to really expand that funding side and the financial base, and very thankful for what he was able to put together there. But bottom line is, every dollar of it comes out of our alumni. It's amazing what they've done over the years and what they've given.
Yeah.
So just thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we appreciate your work that you're doing, and
Thanks.
it's amazing. So
it's a great opportunity to keep it going.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Tambra.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thank you
spending your
Absolutely.
Wednesday afternoon with
No
us here.
problem with that at all.
So I just want to quickly remind everyone we will be open this Friday from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and we have Be the Star karaoke coming in. So if you are a singer, or if you're not a singer, it doesn't really matter to us. If you feel like singing, come on down, sing your lungs out. They're going to be here from 7:30 to 10:30. That is free to attend. And this Saturday, we will be open from 5 to 11, and we have the Breeze Band, and we want to give a huge shout out to Northwest Accounting for sponsoring that show to celebrate the end of tax season, which, we're all happy about that, right? So shout out to them. Come on down, check out the Breeze Band on Saturday, and we will see you this weekend. And again, Tambra, incredible. We can't wait to have you back on.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank
Stephen.
you.